I'm Mr Parker and this is question 13 on the OCR Foundation GCSE Paper 2 from June 2013. For all the questions on this paper, click the link here or check in the video description. Question 13, Part A 1. Write down a fraction equivalent to 1/2. Let's start by drawing a diagram of 1/2. So here's a square, and I will split the square into 2 equal parts. So I've shaded in 1/2 of this square. Now if I split this square up like this, I've still shaded in 1/2 of the whole thing, but now you could write this as 2/4. So one fraction that's the same as a half is 2/4. But there are lots of others. We could split this again like so, and now that's the same as 4/8. So how do we get equivalent fractions? All we do is we multiply the top and the bottom of a fraction by the same amount, so it stays in proportion. So one possibility, I could multiply the top and the bottom by 3 and get 3 out of 6. So any of these answers here that I've written down are possible answers. The one that I'm going to use is the most common, is 2/4. In part 2, we need to write 19/3 as a mixed number. In a whole one we've got 3/3, but we've got 19/3, so we're going to need more than one whole one. So my picture represents 3/3, which is a whole one. So if I take my picture, I'd get 6/3, 9/3, 12/3, 15/3, 18/3, 21/3. That's too many because I only need 19, but what I can do now is rub 2 of them out, and that gives me 19/3. So to write this as a mixed number, we say how many whole ones have we got? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And how many pieces left over? 1 out of 3. So this is 6 1/3. It's important to understand what you're doing using a method. You don't have to draw pictures, though there is a quick way. If you wanted, you could do this in your head. You would say, right, I've got 19/3, I need 3/3 to make a whole one. So I would go 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18. That's 6. And then I would say, right, I need one more, so that's 1/3. So you can do these in your head. Sometimes it's not practical to draw a picture for really big fractions, but it is good to understand where this method comes from. It's how many times the bottom number goes into the top and what's left over. So it's like doing a divide with a remainder. In part 3, we need to write 0.6 as a percentage. To get from a decimal to a percentage, we need to multiply by 100. So I take my 0.6 and I multiply it by 100. That's like moving the decimal point 2 places. Move it once, I get 6. Move it twice, I get 60. So it's 60%. In part 4, we need to write 92% as a fraction, giving your answer in its simplest form. To do this, we need to use the fact that percentage means out of 100. So we can write 92% as 92 out of 100. But we need to give this in its simplest form. So we need to say, right, what can we divide by to make this smaller? Because both numbers are even, I'm going to divide by 2. That's just halving it. So I could say that's 50 there. Half of 90 is 45. Half of 2 is 1, so that's 46. Still both even, so I can half them again. That gives me 23 out of 25. In this case, I did just divide by 2 both times, but you can divide by other numbers other than 2 if you need to. So my final answer is 23 out of 25. All of these questions here could have come up on a non-calculator paper. I'm now going to show you how you could have done some of these questions on your scientific calculator to make life easier for yourself. So first of all, I'm going to do part 2 again. Write 19/3 as a mixed number. One possible way, if I've got a sharp calculator, is I can put in a 19, press the fraction button and then 3, and then press equals. And look, it automatically turns it into 6 1/3. And if I press this change button here, I can cycle between all the different ways of writing that answer. Next, I'm going to look at part 4. So we're writing 92% as a fraction. I still need to know to write it as 92 out of 100. But if I press equals, my calculator will cancel that down for me automatically to get 23 out of 25. So for those two parts, if you know how to use a scientific calculator properly and you've got the right calculator, it can do it for you. Question 13, part B. Jo records the marks for 3 pieces of coursework. The marks on her work are shown below. 13 out of 50, 9 out of 40 and 22%. And we need to write her marks in order of size starting with the lowest. And also we need to show how we decide. Well, I'm going to use the calculator to help with this one, and I'm going to start with 13 out of 50. If I put 13 out of 50 into my calculator and press equals, then I can press the change button and it will turn it into a decimal. So 13 out of 50 is 0.26. Next, I'm going to do 9 out of 40 in the same way. So if I put 9 out of 40, press equals and then press change, I get 0.225. Next, we've got 22%. In the last question, I turned a decimal into a percentage by multiplying by 100. So to get from a percentage to a decimal, I'm going to divide by 100. And to do that, I'm going to move the decimal point 2 places. So it starts here and goes 1, 2. So I get 0.22. You could always use your calculator to divide it by 100 if you're not confident. Now I've got to decide which is the smallest and largest out of these 3 numbers. To help me do that, I'm going to make it so that all 3 numbers have 3 decimal places. So I'm going to put a 0 on the end of that one and a 0 on the end of this one. The first digit in each number is a 0, so that's not any use. The second digit in each one is a 2, so that doesn't help. The third digit, though, is a 6 here, a 2 here, and a 2 here. That tells us that this one is the largest. So 13 out of 50 will go at the end. For the next ones, remember, they've both got a 2 in the second decimal place. In the third decimal place, this one has a 0, and this one has a 5. That means 22% is the smallest, which means 9 over 40 goes in the middle. In part C, it says a mobile phone costs £175. The price is increased by 18%. Calculate the increase in price. Well, what this question is asking me to do is find out what 18% of this amount is. So I want to do 18% of £175. Remember, it's not asking us to find the new price, it's asking us to find out how much the price has increased by. So I can do this using my calculator. Whenever I'm working with percentages or fractions and I see the word of, I can think of that as multiplication. So I need to do 18% times 175. But an easy way to put 18% into your calculator is to turn it into a decimal. So the calculation I'm going to do to work this out is 0.18, which is the same as 18%, times 175. That gives us 31.5. Because it's money, we'll put a pound sign at the beginning and an extra 0 on, because money has 2 decimal places. So my answer is £31.50. Remember, on the calculator paper, don't go to all the trouble of working out 10% and 1% and 5% and adding them together. Just turn it into a decimal and multiply. It's much quicker and you're much less likely to make a mistake.